Hello and welcome to Worldview at the Hindu with me, Suhasini Haidar. This week, India decides to set aside decades-old policy in order to alleviate the pain from the pandemic as it accepts aid, oxygen equipment and medicines from about 40 countries.
We have actually received offers of assistance from various governments. There has been quite an outpouring of solidarity with India. There's been outpouring of, assistance from various countries. Over 40 countries have actually committed to provide us with many of the items that we need most urgently.
Now, in just one cruel month, April alone, India has gone from a country that claimed to have defeated COVID, from being the world's largest vaccine manufacturer as well as the pharmacy of the world, to a country that has been ravaged by the virus, and one that is now seeking both vaccines and basic medicines from abroad in order to treat its coronavirus patients. Within a week of the government sending out appeals through Indian embassies, aid, supplies, offers of help have begun to come in, as I said, from about 40 countries. The Ministry of External Affairs says it is focusing on two main items. One, oxygen equipment, including oxygen concentrators, generators, containers, because the problem they're finding is not so much of production, but of the transportation of oxygen. The second, medicines, pandemic medicines in particular, like remdesivir, tocilizumab, as well as favipiravir, or what is called commonly Fabiflu. Along the way, it's also had to deal with regulatory delays, patent violations, other logistical issues, and it has had to deal with India's image problem. A slew of articles across international media that have pointedly criticized the Modi government for its failure to manage the situation that has led to the loss of nearly 40,000 lives in April alone. So let's take a look at just what is coming in and from where. So the first are the big countries and the big blocs like the US, UK, France, Russia, the Gulf, the European Union. Across the world, really, people are sending in aid. Thousands of oxygen concentrators and generators, ranging from those that cater to just 10 patients to those that cater to about 200 and beyond, as well as stocks of medicines. The US is sending oxygen generators that it uses at military field hospitals as well as the personnel in order to run them. These have all come in as grants or donations, mostly flown in by the countries themselves. In addition, the US has now decided to divert its vaccine ingredients from other orders in order to ensure India has them to ramp up vaccine production. Remember, this was an old demand from India. Russia hopes to start the production of the Sputnik vaccine in India by May the 1st. The second, that India has heard from smaller countries like Bhutan, which offered the use of 2 oxygen plants for neighboring states in the northeast, even from Romania that sent 80 concentrators and other equipment. So you get an idea of the breadth of the world's concern. Then there are commercial supplies. Indian companies have ordered them from countries like China, UAE, Thailand, Singapore. Basically, Indian companies or public sector undertakings or state governments that are paying for them and procuring them. And the government says this is a large part of the supplies coming in. Fourth, there are corporates abroad, including multinationals like Google, Amazon, as well as Indian diaspora organizations, as well as business chambers that are also leading the effort in sending in much needed supplies. Fifth, India has had offers from even adversaries like China and Pakistan, but has not decided to accept them as of now. And sixth, India has decided not to accept personal contributions that have come to the government. So they're not accepting them themselves. They are going to route them instead, things like grants from corporate, smaller countries, as well as individual contributions through the Indian Red Cross. So why is this considered such a major shift in policy? Remember, the government's decision to accept aid actually comes 17 years after then Finance Minister Jaswant Singh had announced during his budget speech where he said that India has now reached a stage when it no longer relies on aid that is tied to a specific purpose. Developmental aid is a different matter. And India was going to review its dependence on all external donors. A year later, Dr. Manmohan Singh's government said no to foreign aid during the tsunami, adding that India was now itself a global donor. It was helping out other countries and not a recipient. In 2018, the Modi government, you might remember, reiterated its stand on this policy and refused any offers of foreign aid that had come in for the Kerala floods as well. Now, officials tell us that this time, this exception made for the coronavirus is really a rare exception. India hopes to fight the second wave. The government hopes that India will resume its role as a leading manufacturer of vaccines, especially for COVID, and become once more the pharmacy of the world. In the long term, officials believe there will be a demand for close to 10 to 15 billion doses of vaccines every year. And the government hopes to ramp up India's own capacities in order to cater to a large part of that. So finally, let's take a look at what are the likely foreign policy implications of this major decision of India to take aid for the coronavirus crisis. In the immediate present, here is what we can certainly see. The government does hope that the outpouring of empathy and aid from abroad really points to intensifying foreign relations as a good sign, that it has, in a sense, allowed countries to repay India for its exports that India had sent last year of HCQ and other materials, as well as for its vaccine Maitri program this year. Remember, we've heard this from the US president, from the Russian president, many others have said that they would like to thank India the way and help India the way India had helped the world last year. However, there is no question that the act of acceptance of aid and the idea that India now needs what it has refused for 2 decades is a setback for India's image. The government will have to do much more than just counter the narratives and the articles in order to rebuild that stature of the country. Another outcome of India's crisis, and particularly the inability to complete pharmaceutical supplies, may be that other countries begin to think twice and begin to talk about diversifying their supply chains. German Chancellor Angela Merkel actually said recently that it was something to rethink and certainly could have been a mistake to have built up only India as a source for pharmaceuticals for Europe. Finally, there is the impact on India's vaccine Maitri program, particularly for the neighborhood, but for dozens of countries that have now been left in the lurch. Countries in the neighborhood like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal actually paid up for vaccine supplies from India as early as January, and India has now had to stop those vaccine supplies. Government officials say they think those supplies are unlikely to resume before July. So what this means is that as these countries are at this present moment racing to vaccinate their own populations, trying to stave off any kind of a wave, the kind that India has seen, they will naturally turn to others, including China and Russia, and we've already seen some of that from the neighborhood. Now, my book recommendation this week does not deal with this subject, although we will continue to track it for you. The book is about Indian foreign policy as a whole, particularly in the Asian context, and it's Shiv Shankar Menon's India and Asian Geopolitics, the Past, Present. That's definitely a must-read. Do write in to us with your thoughts about the current crisis and how India is handling it at www.thehindu.com. Also our YouTube channel, where you can see our ongoing coverage of the crisis. That's it on Worldview. From the team here, thanks for watching.